I'm North Hempstead Town Supervisor Judy Bosworth, and I, along with our town board, are proud to present At Home with North Hempstead, a series of special programs for children, seniors, as well as entertainment for residents of all ages. We hope you enjoy this special presentation and check back often for new content.
Hi, thank you for joining me today for another art making session. My name is Marie and I will be showing you how to create this beautiful eye drawing inspired by the artist Renee Magritte. I will be showing you step by step how to create it and also providing some tips on how to use soft pastels. Before I review the project, these are the supplies that you will need. White paper. You can also do this on a colored piece of paper. You will also need an eraser, a marker, and a pencil, or any other dry medium that you can use to color. For this demo, I am using soft pastels, but you can also use colored pencils, crayons, markers, or any other mediums of your choice. This project is inspired by Magritte's piece, The False Mirror. When you look at the piece, it definitely makes you stop and focus on it. When I first looked at it, I experienced a sense of unease. One interpretation of this image is that it symbolizes how our eyes are subjective and we tend to filter out what we want to see. That what we see is not what is actually in front of us, hence the name false mirror, since a mirror is not subjective. Now, the project we're about to create focuses on drawing a scene within an eye. It could be realistic or abstract. I decided to draw a sunset within my eye. The first step is to draw the outline of the eye. Now, to simplify this, think of a white arc or a hill. The shape of the eye usually resembles like a lemon or an almond. So start by drawing an arc and then another one right underneath it. And then you're going to connect them. All right, and then after that, you're going to be drawing a horizontal line. You can estimate where the middle of the eye is. It does not have to be perfect. And then you're going to draw a smaller arc somewhere near the middle to represent the sun. The next step will be to add the boats. When you're adding the boats, you kind of want to think of triangles and trapezoids. So the top of the boat will resemble kind of like a 90-degree triangle, and the bottom will resemble a trapezoid. This could be geometric or a bit more organic. The boat that's closer to you is going to be a bit bigger than the one that's in the background. And you just kind of want to draw lightly, not too hard. So that way, when you go over it with the soft pastel, it kind of goes over the pencil mark. And we're not going to be adding eyelashes or anything at the moment, just what's inside the eye. And then after that, kind of like the little reflection lines for when the sun is setting. You can make this as big or as small as you want. I decided to have mine go out of the eye. I thought that would be a little more interesting and cooler. Yours can stay within the eye if you choose. It's really up to you. And this is where our eraser comes in, just to erase any little mistakes we make. And after that, you're kind of just going to draw around the eye. Now, if it helps, you can have a picture of an actual eye, and you can kind of like base the eye off of that. I was honestly creating this from my mind, but I think it's always best to have a reference photo if you can. And take the time to just kind of fix all the lines now to make the eye shape look more realistic. And then I think that the drawing is pretty much done now, that we should be able to start, coloring it. So now if you haven't used soft pastels before, I am using the ones that are a bit more chalky. So they kind of tend to go everywhere. You're going to be seeing me blowing them throughout the screen. But the good thing is they do come off your hands very easily. The mess isn't that bad. You just want to be careful of where you're working when you're using them. So to start with, I am going to be starting with a light blue color, kind of like at the top. I am kind of creating a little bit of my own colors for the sunset, but it is using like the basic, like red, orange, and yellow. And I just added the blue just because I felt like it made it pop a bit. So when you're using the soft pastel, you do want to be mindful of like the side you're using. If you're using the pointy side, that's really more for like details. So to start with, when you want to cover a big area, you would use kind of like, don't use the side, but lay the pastel a bit flat when you're using it. After that, we are adding the yellow. So we're not blending them at the moment, we're just adding them next to each other. We will be blending them a little later on. So we're going to be using our hands to blend them. And then after that, we'll do orange. So I'm going from light to dark. So I'm going from yellow to orange and then to finally red. A sunset could also be the opposite way, from dark to light. Or you could add your own colors within the sunset, like green or purple. It's really up to you. I kept mine a bit more traditional just because of the drawing is very surrealist in a way. And then finally we've got some red. So this is the first layer. It is going to be a bit lighter right now. You don't have to worry about pressing too hard with the chalk pastel. The first layer is supposed to be light. We're going to blend it and then go over with the second layer. Now we are going to use our index finger just to gently and lightly blend the colors together. You don't want to press too hard, you just want to go over it lightly so that way they kind of start to blend within each other. Because we're going to be going over this with another layer to make it even darker. This just helps the soft pastel stay within the paper and not on top of the surface. So right now everything's kind of like nicely blended. It looks really pretty. After that, we're going to be working on the bottom, like the ocean, where the ocean is. Now, the ocean, if you want, you could make it like, red, orange, yellow, and blue. I decided to just make it blue and light blue, but you could make like the colors you use for the sunset at the top reflect fully within the ocean. Once again, that's really up to you. So when you're doing this, you kind of want to go around the boats. You want to be as careful as you can. But if you go over the boats, it's not a big deal because you can always go over it with the black chalk. Right? So you see how I'm not using the point part of the pastel, but I'm inkling it down a bit so it's flat, so it covers more area. Because if I use the pointy part, that's meant to create lines, so it won't really help me out. So I'm just going over with the blue. I'm not touching where the reflection of the sun is. I'm really just going around it. So I like to work from light to dark. So I would always start with the dark color and then add the darkest color. Add the darker colors as I go. It makes it easier with oil pastel only because it's really about layering, and it would be kind of hard to layer dark colors and then add light colors. So you always do want to start with the lighter colors first. See, and then now I'm going with the darker blue, just really starting from the outer and like the outer edge of the piece and going inwards. You do have a lot of, creative, creative freedom when you're making this, because once again, this is from my mind. So don't feel that you have to do exactly what I'm doing. This is really just an example for you to use, and then, take it, make it your own, do as you please. Or you could create exactly what I'm creating. That's really fine with me. Once again, you can use your index finger just to lightly and gently blend the dark blue and the light blue together. Now we are going to be working around the eye. So I'm kind of going to be building the skin tone. So that's why I'm starting with a light peach and not starting with the darker brown, because once again, you want to start layering with the lighter color and then add the darker color as you go along. So I'm being mindful of the lines that I drew. I'm kind of just going very gently with this because I'm going to be blending other colors into it. So you don't want to press too hard with the peach color, all right? And then after that, there is this type of like yellow ochre yellow that you want to use. This isn't actually yellow. It's a yellow ochre color. And you're going to go around that also. And then once again, you want to use the index finger just to lightly and gently blend the peach color and the yellow ochre color together. Now, of course, this still looks a little like very yellow and stuff, but we do have to layer, and this is the first layer. But you just got to keep going with it. As you add more layers, you kind of start to see like, you know, the shadows and the highlight. After that, I'm going to be using like, it's not a dark brown. This is more of a light brown color. First, I'm kind of just going over the line and then I'm shading around it. So if you're using a photo reference, you would be looking at the photo because the darker brown is really helping me figure out where the shadow for the eye is. You know, like when you close your eyes or when it's open, there's that little bit of shadow around it. That's what that line is for. Just to give it a bit more of like a three-dimensional effect so it doesn't look as flat. So I'm using a light brown, not too dark, making a line and then gently blending it within the other colors. There's a lot of blending with soft pastel. The colors are very bright though, which I'm really happy with. They just take a lot of blending to get to that, like, to get it to be very bright. So right now we can kind of like start to see, you know, like the eye shape, the shape of the eye coming together. I can't speak right now. And then after that, we're going to be working within the eye, but I just really wanted to get the outside nice and done. And to create some highlights, you can grab the white and go over where you would want the highlight to be. So the highlight is basically like, it's not like the white part, but it's just like a very light part of it. This really also adds to the form of the eye and makes it look three-dimensional. Almost like it's coming out of the paper a little bit. For the sun, I am using not like a lemon yellow, but more like a medium yellow for it. And then I'll probably go over it later, just so that it's darker. And then now we're going to be working on the little reflection part of the sun. Once again, you're starting with the light blue. And then we're probably just going to use white to go over it to make it like really light. And as you're using, you know, like using one pastel and then mixing with another, the color will get on it, but it will come off. You can just like, if you have a paper towel, you could use it and just rub it off like that. But as you're working, it will naturally come off. So don't worry too much about that. So far though, the work is coming along pretty well. So after, like right now, the first layer is completely done. Now you're going to go and do a second layer. So I'm starting with the red. All you're really doing for the second layer is you're going over the color, but this time you're pressing harder than you were the first time. So that way the colors become more saturated and bright. And this is also the time where you're going to have a lot of like pastel going everywhere because as you press harder, a lot of the chalk comes off. You can really just like blow it to one side or you can let it build and then lift up the paper and shake it off. I usually just blow it to one side of the paper, which does make it a little bit messy, but I find it makes it easier to work faster. So right now we're just doing the second layer. And right now you can see that it is getting darker. And it is starting to look like an actual eye. So that is really good. And you can use your index finger again just to blend around the eye. We're not blending the second layer. We're really just blending around the eye. The second layer, we don't want to blend too much because we do want to keep, you know, that bright color. So I'm just using the peach again to go around, like the more outer part of the eye, just so that way to give the impression that, you know, this isn't like an eye on an actual body. That's why I'm adding all of the extra colors around it. And to also give it more of that three-dimensional effect, which I find to be really cool. And once again, you're going to be adding a second layer to the outer eye. So I'm just taking, this is a bit of a darker brown than before. So I'm going over the lines I made, blending it gently. You always want to blend because that gives it like this very nice soft look. And it makes it seem like a bit more natural, you know. If you do want to keep like, if you want to have the marks showing, that you can do that. But for this one, I wanted to give it like a nice soft look to it. That's why I keep blending them. So I'm just doing a second layer for the orange. It was looking a little bit too light. You can do like 2, 3, 4 layers. The main idea to remember is that the more layers you do, the darker the color is. It was looking pretty bright for me. That's why I'm not doing that much layers. Also, if you are not using soft pastels, you don't really have to do a lot of layering. I should have mentioned that earlier. But if you're using like color pencils, that would require layering, but like markers wouldn't really require much layering because that color just like, it'll get dark immediately. And then finally, we are going to be working on the boats. So I'm using a black color for the boats to give this like silhouette effect, to give the idea that the sun is setting, so you can't really see much light hitting the boat, which is why it's dark. You could, I mean, you could give your boat any color you would like. I just thought the black silhouette looked really nice. And as you can see, I am still like blowing the soft pastels to the side. Because when you press really hard on it, a lot of the chalk pastel leaves. So you just always have to like be looking around so that way it doesn't build up to be too much. Because then it's going to mix within the colors you've already created. So you can take this time to, you know, use darker colors to go over any part of the drawing that you want to be darker. I'm mostly making the outer part darker and leaving the like the middle part of the drawing a bit lighter. And then once again, you're just pressing hard and then you're blending the colors together. So I'm using the white just to give a bit of highlight and to really bring out the form of the face. This is probably the last time I'll be using the white because it's looking pretty light right now. So like right on top of the eyelid is usually pretty light, so I'm putting that there. But once again, if you do have a photo reference next to you, that will really help you to see where like should be light and where should be dark. And as you can see, there's like pastel everywhere, but that's expected. And at the moment, it shouldn't really like seep into the paper, but if your hand does go over it, it will seep into the paper. So you just have to like shake off the paper when it gets to be too much. So this is where we are at right now. I think it's coming along pretty well. You know, the main thing we're missing are the eyelashes and also the little birdies. You can also use the white within the eye if you want to bring out anything you want to make a little lighter or to pop a bit. You can use the white to go over it. And the cool thing is, even though you're using it over colors, like the color that you used it before doesn't usually like end up mixing with the color you're using now. So that's always good. I'm just working on the last layers right now, making anything like really dark and blending it. I usually try to create a lot of contrast with it, like when I use soft pastel rather than not creating a lot of contrast. So I try to have, like dark right next to light. So when you're doing the eyelashes, you really want to do this like upward motion. Also with eyelashes, if you look closely, they kind of like, they're in clumps. So you want to be mindful of that when you're making the lines. Instead of like making the lines like, like the same amount, like distance apart, that's not naturally how they are. They're usually in little clumps. So like 3 of them together, a little space, and then another like 3 or 4. That usually gives it a bit more realistic. And then you're going to be using the pointy side. This is where the pointy side of the pastel is really useful, because you want to have this like, you just want to make a line really, So you don't have to press too hard on this, the first one, just in case, you do make a mistake with the eye, it'll be easier to go over it. So I'm going a bit lightly, and then I'm going to go over it one more time. So I'm creating these little clumps of eyelashes. The length isn't too long. Of course, the bottom lashes will be much shorter than the top lashes, but usually the lashes they become a little longer, like when you go towards the outer part of the eye. But you see I'm creating these little clumps here. That's really what you want to focus on, especially on the bottom of the eyelashes. That really makes it look like, like an actual eye. So this is what the work is looking like right now. We do still have like a little bit more details to add, but we're about 90% done. So after that I am going to be going over the eyelashes again, this time pressing harder, just so that way the eyelashes pop out a bit more and become darker. Now I'm just doing a final blend and blending whatever I want to be smooth right now. If you do want to keep anything, like any marks showing, you can do that. You don't have to blend everything. I just wanted to blend it so that way it looks smooth. You can also take this time to, make any like final details that you want to add. Go over some colors that you really want to make pop right now. If you want to add any final highlights, you can do this. But this is why you want to make sure you try to get all of that done before you add the eyelashes, because it's kind of hard to work in between and the eyelash is already there. This is for the outside of the eye. The inside of the eye should be fine. If you would like, you can also add other objects within the scene. If you want to add a palm tree like to the side, that could be really cool. Like a black silhouette of a palm tree. Or like birds. That could be nice also. Maybe a person. Alien, I don't know. But the idea is that, you kind of really make it what you want to, and I'm really just providing you the foundation. I am really amazed though at like how the reproduction looks really like the original. Yeah, they do look pretty. The only thing about the one I just worked on now is I added a bit more yellow to it, but that's fine. So right here is the final piece. I hope that the project was simple enough and that you were able to, learn some tips and tricks on how to draw the eye, but also how to use the soft pastel. Thank you for joining me.